My family skipped my wedding on purpose, and still said it was my fault. My wedding day was loud and bright and full of music, but every time I looked to the left side of the room, my stomach flipped, because the whole row of chairs with little signs that said, "Reserved for family," were completely, painfully empty. My husband kept squeezing my hand under the table, trying to keep me grounded, and the staff at the venue kept checking with me about timing and dessert and all those normal reception things, but all I could really see were those stupid empty chairs, lined up like proof that I had finally become exactly what my mother always said I was. The problem. The disappointment. The one who chose strangers over blood. I remember staring at the empty seats during the speeches and thinking that if I blinked long enough, my mother would just appear out of nowhere, sweeping in late with some dramatic excuse and a forced hug that smelled like perfume and guilt. Instead, what I got was my phone vibrating nonstop in my little clutch bag, buzzing against the cheap makeup compact I had bought from a random store near my apartment. I knew exactly who it was before I even looked. My mother had always been like an alarm system I could not turn off. As a kid, if I did not answer her calls by the third ring, she would show up at school or call the office of whatever part-time job I had and demand to know if I was still alive. She used to brag about that, like it was proof of her love. On my wedding night, the notifications were lighting up the screen so much that my friend from work leaned over and joked that my phone was having more fun than we were. I laughed a little, because what else do you do when you are the bride whose family did not bother to show up? My husband's family was out on the dance floor, his cousins teaching my coworkers some ridiculous line dance while his parents watched from their table with those soft, proud smiles that made my chest ache. They had thrown themselves into this wedding like they had been waiting their whole lives to gain a daughter. They helped me pick the flowers, negotiated prices with the venue, and checked in every week to ask if I was feeling overwhelmed. Meanwhile, my own family was across town celebrating the engagement party of my younger brother, which happened to be on the exact same day and at the exact same time as my wedding. The date of my wedding had been booked for almost a full year before my brother even had a girlfriend, but somehow the story my parents decided to run with was that I set everything up just to ruin his big moment. I found that out later. In the moment, all I knew was that the chairs with my family's names on them were empty, my childhood friend who was supposed to be my maid of honor was nowhere to be seen, and the only people who had shown up for me were the ones who did not share my last name or my childhood house. I tried so hard to act normal. I smiled when people toasted us. I danced with my husband and pretended not to notice when guests glanced at the empty chairs and then quickly looked away, embarrassed on my behalf. I told myself it was fine, that I did not need them, that this was proof that the family I was marrying into was the one that actually deserved me. But every time my phone buzzed, I could feel the old guilt creeping up my spine, that conditioned reflex that said, "Answer your mother, or things will get worse." At some point during the cake cutting, my husband leaned in and whispered, "You do not have to answer. Not tonight." I nodded like I agreed. But I still ended up slipping into the hallway with my clutch in my hand, because apparently even getting married was not enough to break the habit of chasing crumbs from people who had never given me a full meal of affection in my entire life. Out in the hallway with the muffled music bleeding through the walls and the smell of food drifting from the kitchen, I finally pulled out my phone. The notification bar was pure chaos. Missed calls, voicemails, messages from my mother, my brother, my friend from childhood, and a couple of relatives whose numbers I did not even have saved properly, just labeled as aunt and uncle from years ago. The group chat that used to include me during holidays was lighting up without me in it, which honestly felt about right. Before I could even open anything, a text popped up from a number I recognized but had not seen in a long time. It was my cousin, the one who had always been the backup plan for every family event. If my parents needed a last-minute babysitter, they would call her. If they needed extra hands at the family shop when I was busy with exams, they would call her instead of just accepting that I could not do everything. She and I used to joke about how we were both ranked second place in our own parents' hearts. "Hey," her message said. "I am at the party. Can you talk?" I stared at the words for a second, feeling my chest tighten. It took me a minute to realize she meant the engagement party. My brother's celebration. The one that had stolen my entire family out of my wedding seats. I stepped further into the hallway and answered her call when it came in a second later. The first thing I heard was noise. Loud music, people talking over one another, dishes clinking, then her voice, low and tense. "I am so sorry," she blurted out. "I need to tell you what is going on over here because it is insane." I pressed my back against the wall and slid down until I was half sitting, half squatting in the corner of the dim hallway. My dress was not designed for wall sitting, but honestly, comfort had already left the building when my parents chose my brother's party over my wedding. "What do you mean, what is going on?" I asked, even though a part of me already knew it was going to be bad. She took a breath, like she was bracing herself. In the background, I heard my mother's voice, loud and animated, like she was telling a story. It made my skin crawl instantly. "They are telling everyone," my cousin said slowly. That you booked your wedding on the same day out of spite. Your mother just told this whole table that you have always been jealous of your brother, and that you did this on purpose to make him look bad. For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard her. The hallway seemed to tilt a little, and I pressed my hand to the wall to steady myself. I could picture it perfectly, though. My mother with a drink in her hand, leaning in like she was sharing some tragic secret, explaining to distant relatives and new in-laws how her ungrateful daughter had sabotaged her own brother's big moment. "You have got to be kidding me," I whispered. "She said that out loud?" "She is saying it to anyone who will listen," my cousin answered. "And your friend is helping." That hit me harder than the rest. "What do you mean, my friend?" "She is over here too," my cousin said, lowering her voice. "She is telling people that you did not even really want her as your maid of honor, that you made everything difficult, that the wedding was basically thrown together just to prove some weird point. I swear, I am not exaggerating. I recorded some of it. I did not want you to think I was being dramatic." A soft chime sounded as she sent something through. I watched a little audio clip appear on my screen. My thumb hovered over it, but I could not bring myself to press play yet. It was like my body already knew how much it would hurt to hear their voices saying those things. In the background of the call, my cousin's microphone picked up my mother again. "She has always had it out for her brother," my mother was saying to someone. "He is the golden one, everybody knows that. She could not stand seeing him finally happy, so she picked this date on purpose. I mean, who does that to their own family?" I closed my eyes and let my head fall back against the wall. The thing that made me want to scream was that the date had been on the fridge calendar for almost a full year before my brother even met his fiancée. He had proposed last winter, and then magically, somehow, his engagement party landed exactly on the same Saturday that my husband and I had built everything around. When I asked my mother about it at the time, she had waved her hand and said, "It is only a party. People will decide where they want to go." I guess they did. As my cousin kept whispering details about who was nodding along and who was pretending not to hear, my phone buzzed again with another incoming call from my mother. I declined it and watched the notification pop up for a voicemail almost immediately, followed by a string of texts. "Answer your phone," one said. "There's a problem with the food." Of course there was. There was always a problem that apparently only I could solve. I finally hit play on one of the audio clips my cousin had sent. Hearing my mother's voice talking about me like I was some vindictive stranger made my stomach twist. She was laughing in the recording, saying, "You know how she is, always thinking the world is against her. Honestly, she brought this on herself." My childhood friend chimed in, her voice familiar in a way that made my chest hurt. "She did not even want me as her maid of honor, you know? She just asked because she had to. She has been so weird since she met that guy. I told her she was rushing, but she never listens." That was the part that almost made me drop the phone. I blocked her the next day. She tried to send me this long apology about being misunderstood, but I did not even open it. I could not unhear her voice siding with my mother like it was a sport. We had sat in my tiny kitchen months earlier, and she had cried about her last breakup while helping me assemble invitations. She had never mentioned feeling unwanted. If anything, she had joked about how excited she was to finally be in a wedding where the bride deserves nice things. Apparently that version of her did not make it to my brother's party. I do not even know how long I stayed in that hallway listening to pieces of my life being dissected from across town. At some point, my husband came looking for me. He found me sitting on the floor with my dress pulled around me, clutching my phone like it was a grenade. "What happened?" he asked, dropping down beside me without thinking twice about the floor or his suit pants. "They are saying I did this on purpose," I said, my voice sounding weirdly calm and far away. "My mother, my friend, my brother. They are telling everyone I booked the wedding just to ruin his party." He reached for my phone, and I let him take it. He listened to a couple of the clips, his jaw tightening more with every second. When another call from my mother popped up, he hit decline before it could even ring twice, and then, without asking, he held down the power button and turned the whole thing off. "Hey," he said softly, putting the dead phone back into my bag. "You do not have to let them in tonight. They chose not to be here. That is on them, not you." From the ballroom, the DJ announced some group dance, and people cheered. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was both inside and outside my own wedding at the same time. "It just hurts," I admitted. "I thought, on this one day, maybe they would show up for me." He looked at me with that mix of love and frustration that only someone who has watched you minimize your own pain for years can really pull off. "I have watched you bend yourself into knots for them since the day I met you," he said. "You have paid your brother's bills. You have covered for his messes. You have taken your mother's calls during work meetings and on holidays and in the middle of the night. You did everything right, and this is still how they treat you. At some point, it is okay to say, enough." I wish I could say that was the moment I became this strong, independent woman who cut off her toxic family in one clean slice. It was not. What actually happened was that I took a deep breath, let him help me up off the floor, and we went back into the reception. I danced with him, laughed with his cousins, accepted hugs from his parents, and pretended like my heart was not quietly breaking in the corner. The next morning, reality crashed back in with the grace of a falling cabinet. We were in the small hotel room his parents had gifted us for the night, still in that haze where everything feels slightly unreal and you keep remembering you are married now, like it is a surprise each time. My husband was in the shower humming some song, and I was sitting on the edge of the bed in one of his oversized shirts, staring at my phone like it was a wild animal I needed to approach carefully. I finally turned it back on. Notifications exploded across the screen. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, a handful of sweet messages from my coworkers and his family congratulating us, and then a flood of messages from my family. My mother had left so many voicemails that the inbox warning popped up. The message preview bar was basically one long scroll of, "Call me back now and you need to fix this," and "I am so disappointed in you." What caught my eye, though, were the messages from my brother. They were not about me. They were about food. "Call the catering guy," one text said. "He is saying he is canceling last minute. Fix it." Another. "He said you know him. Make him change his mind. People are arriving." I frowned and scrolled up. Somewhere in the mess was a text from my mother that said, "The catering company pulled out. They are claiming some ridiculous reason. You need to talk to your contact and sort this out. Your brother is humiliated." There was no "how was the wedding," not a single congratulations, just panic about their party. I rubbed my forehead and sighed. I already knew which catering guy they were talking about. A couple of years earlier, when I was still trying to prove to my parents that my job and my side business were not a phase, I had helped a small local event company streamline their scheduling and client communication. It was one of my first proper consulting gigs. The owner and I had stayed in touch. Apparently, at some point, my mother had gotten his number from my phone or from an old email and hired his company for my brother's engagement party, dropping my name as a reference. I should have just muted the chat and gone back to the little bubble of newlywed peace in that hotel room. That would have been the smart thing to do. Instead, I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Kendra," he said. "I was actually expecting you might call at some point." That made my eyebrows go up. "I saw all the messages," I said carefully. "Apparently you canceled last night?" He gave this tired little laugh. "Yeah, I did. And before you say anything, I followed the contract exactly. Your mother is just not used to hearing the word no." I dragged my hand through my hair. "Can you at least tell me what happened?" I woke up to 100 messages making it sound like I sabotaged the whole thing for fun. There was a pause. Then a sigh. "Look, when your mother first reached out, she mentioned you and said you had recommended us. That is the only reason I agreed to take the booking. I figured if you vouch for someone, they cannot be that bad. I did not know it was for the same day as your wedding until later. That already felt weird. But whatever, people do overlapping events all the time. I thought, maybe there was some family misunderstanding I did not want to be in the middle of. And then," I prompted, already dreading the answer. "And then," he continued, "she started calling every other day to change the guest count, add items, demand special dishes, all without wanting to adjust the budget. She kept saying things like, 'You know my daughter, she will tell you I am good for it.' Like that was some magic password. Last week she called and basically told me that everyone important was going to the engagement party and that your wedding was just some small ceremony, which, by the way, was a weird thing to say about your own kid." I closed my eyes. That sounded exactly like her. "I pushed back on some of the changes," he said. "She exploded. Started yelling about how you owed the family, how everything she had done for you meant you should be on her side. It got really disrespectful. I do not let clients talk to my staff like that, even if I like their relatives, so I told her we were canceling the service and refunding the portion allowed by the contract. She did not like that answer." "I bet she did not," I muttered. "She is telling everyone I used my connection to destroy the party." "I figured," he said, sounding almost apologetic. "I just wanted you to know that is not what happened." She crossed a line. "I am not risking my team or my reputation over someone who thinks contracts are optional if they guilt trip you enough." We talked a bit longer about technical details, but the important part was already clear. My mother had used my name to get a discount, and then blown up when someone finally decided they did not owe her endless patience. After I hung up, I sat on the bed for a long time, staring at the wall. The shower turned off, and my husband came out with a towel around his waist, his hair damp and messy. He took one look at my face and knew something else had happened. "Let me guess," he said, sitting beside me. "They turned their mess into your fault." "They always do," I said quietly. "The catering guy canceled because she was screaming at his staff. She used my name to get in the door and then told him my wedding was small and unimportant. Now she wants me to call him and make him publicly say it was his fault." My husband whistled under his breath. "Of course she does." My phone buzzed again with another text from my mother. "You made a promise to this family. Fix this. People are asking questions." Something in me finally snapped. I called her. She answered on the first ring like she had been holding the phone in her hand. "Well, finally," she said. "You have no idea the disaster you caused. He is refusing to work with us. You need to call him and tell him." "Stop," I cut in, my voice shaking. "I talked to him. I know exactly what happened. You screamed at his staff and tried to change the contract without paying. You used my name and then trashed my wedding like it was nothing. You did not even text me congratulations. You missed my entire wedding for that party, and now you want me to clean up your mess?" There was a beat of stunned silence on her end. My mother was not used to being interrupted. "Watch your tone," she snapped. "We are your parents. We were counting on you. Your brother is humiliated in front of very important people, and you are making this about you?" I actually laughed. This ugly, disbelieving sound that did not feel like it belonged to me. "You made it about me the second you told people I did this out of spite. You have been spinning this story that I am jealous of him since we were kids. I spent years taking care of things for him, and you still think I wake up in the morning planning revenge missions. I am done. I am not calling anyone for you." "Do not be ridiculous," she hissed. "You cannot abandon your family like this. People will talk." "They already are," I said. "Enjoy your party." And I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard afterward that my husband gently took the phone away and put it on the dresser. "You did great," he said softly. "Even if you are about to spiral about it for the next week." "I already am," I admitted, leaning into him. "She is going to tell everyone I am ungrateful. She is probably texting relatives as we speak." "Let her," he said. "Anyone who knows you knows the truth. And the ones who do not? Maybe it is time they see who she really is." He was right, but that did not make it easier. I still cried in the shower later, quietly, so he would not feel like he had to fix it. I still replayed every word I had said to my mother, wondering if I had gone too far or not far enough. That is the thing about growing up in a family where your emotions are constantly weaponized. Even when you finally stand up for yourself, it feels like proof that you are the selfish one. I thought things might calm down after that. I was wrong. A couple of days into our very short honeymoon, my cousin texted again. "Do you have your laptop?" she wrote. "I need to show you something in person, but I do not want to send it all by phone." That is how I ended up sitting at a cafe near our rental place. My husband across from me with his coffee while my cousin opened her laptop and turned it toward me like she was about to reveal government secrets. Her hands were trembling a little, which did not exactly help my nerves. "I know you probably do not want to see this," she said, "but I also know you. You always doubt yourself, so I figured you should have actual proof." On the screen, a chat window was open. It was a group thread between my mother, my brother, and a couple of other relatives. She had taken screenshots, dozens of them, all neatly saved in a folder labeled with the date of my wedding. "Before you freak out," she added quickly, "I did not hack anything. One of the uncles left his phone on the table at the party and the messages popped up. I took pictures of the screen. That is it." I scrolled through the images in silence. The first ones were from months before, around the time my brother got engaged. "We should do the engagement party on that Saturday," my brother had typed. "Everyone will already be in town." My mother had responded, "Is that not the day of her wedding?" "So," he wrote, "people will pick what matters more." Then my mother, "You are right. She picked that date without thinking about anyone else because she is selfish. If she complains, we tell everyone she set it up like this on purpose." Another message, weeks later. "Remember to say she never told us the date clearly. Say we only found out after we booked everything." My brother, "She can deal with it. She is always fine. He needs the support more. She will have his family there." There were messages from my childhood friend too. Little voice notes saying things like, "She will not cut you off. She is too soft. She will forgive you like always." My mother had responded with heart emojis and, "That is why we love you. You understand family." I felt like I was going to be sick. "They really planned it," I whispered. "They actually sat there and planned to steal my day and then blame me." My cousin nodded grimly. "I know. I always thought your mother was intense. But this is another level. I wanted you to see it so you do not let them convince you that you imagined it." I scrolled through more screenshots. My mother bragging to someone about how she had convinced the catering company to add more dishes without paying more. Saying, "Kendra will talk to them if they complain. She owes us." My brother complaining about having to share attention with me his whole life, even though, from where I was sitting, the spotlight had never left him. I looked up at my cousin. "Why are you still at their events?" I asked. It came out harsher than I meant. She winced. "Because if I do not go, my mother will punish me for months. You know how it is. At least this way I can keep an eye on things. And now I am here, showing you this. So maybe it counts for something." I took a deep breath and squeezed her hand. "It does," I said. "It really does. I am just processing. Here's the thing I have not mentioned yet. By the time all of this was happening, I was not just some overworked office assistant with a demanding mother. I had quietly built something of my own. I had always been good at organizing chaos. As a teenager, I was the one people called when they needed help pulling school events out of thin air. In college, I somehow ended up coordinating fundraisers and club gatherings even when I swore I was too busy. Somewhere along the way, I realized I could turn that skill into a business. So, while working my day job in admin at a local office, I had slowly grown a tiny consulting side business focused on planning corporate events and helping small companies not trip over their own scheduling. At first, my parents barely acknowledged it. When I mentioned a new client, my mother would nod and immediately pivot to talking about my brother's latest idea or minor promotion. If I stayed late to meet with a potential corporate contact, she would complain that I was ignoring family. My father would occasionally ask if I was still playing with that side thing, like it was a hobby. The only person who really cared was my husband, back when he was just the sweet guy who stayed after his own shift to help me clean up after meetings. By the time we got married, my side thing had turned into a real company. I had a small office downtown, a part-time assistant, and a handful of regular corporate clients. I was not rich or anything, but I was stable. I had built something that did not depend on my family's approval. My parents never asked to see the office. They drove past the building once and said the parking looked terrible. So when my cousin sat across from me and asked, "What are you going to do now?" my first instinct was to say, "Fix it, obviously." That was my role. The fixer, the smoother, the one who called vendors and talked teachers into extending deadlines, who arranged rides and covered fees and quietly wired money to bail my brother out of whatever mess he had gotten himself into this time. Instead, for once, I said, "For nothing." "Nothing?" she echoed like she had misheard. "I am not going to fix this," I repeated, trying to convince myself at the same time. They planned this. They chose this. They can deal with the fallout. My husband squeezed my knee under the table, a silent "finally" I could almost hear. Of course, my nothing lasted approximately 2 days before life decided to escalate again. The first sign that things had spilled beyond our messy little family circle was a text from one of my coworkers back in the office. "Hey, is this you?" Followed by a link. I clicked it and felt my heart almost stop. It was a short video posted on a social media app by my sister-in-law-to-be, my brother's fiancée. One of my coworkers had posted a few quick clips from the reception the night before, and she had grabbed them and turned them into a story time montage like it was content. The clip showed a quick montage of my wedding day. Me walking down the aisle. Me standing at the front of the room with my husband. The reception hall with one side filled with his family and the other side clearly empty where mine should have been. The caption read, "My fiancé's family showed up. His bride's family chose her brother's party instead." Make it make sense. The video had already racked up hundreds of thousands of views. A couple of big wedding drama accounts reposted it, and once that happened, it stopped feeling like my life and started feeling like internet entertainment. The comments were full of people sharing their own horror stories about families choosing sons over daughters, about favoritism and ruined events. A couple of popular pages had reposted it with captions about brides who deserved better. People were furious on my behalf, and they did not even know the half of it. I felt exposed and weirdly guilty, like I had done something wrong by existing in a story that other people were now using as proof of some larger point. It did not matter that I had not posted anything myself. My face, my empty chairs, my humiliation were out there for strangers to pick apart between sips of coffee and doom scrolling. My brother, of course, could not handle being the villain of the internet for more than a few hours. He put up his own long post on another platform, all about how his sister had always been unstable and dramatic, how she had intentionally booked her wedding for the same day to hurt the family, how his poor fiancé was caught in the crossfire of my supposed jealousy. He painted himself as this wounded son who had been neglected once in favor of his selfish sister, throwing in a couple of vague mentions about times he had saved me growing up. My cousin sent me screenshots with a dry, "He has entered the chat." Here is where things actually got interesting, though. Remember all those screenshots she had of the group messages? The ones where my mother and brother had literally planned this whole overlapping date stunt? She uploaded parts of those, anonymously, in the comments under his post. She did not share anything that would publicly identify her, just the sections where they discussed scheduling the engagement party on my wedding day, the messages about, "People will pick what matters more," the part where my mother said they would tell everyone I had not made the date clear. People ate it up. Within hours, the comments under my brother's post flipped from supportive to furious. Strangers called him out for lying, for trying to rewrite the timeline. Others dragged my mother for her words, quoting her line about my wedding being just a small ceremony, while my brother's party was the real event. They pointed out the timestamps that showed my wedding had been booked long before his engagement. He tried to delete some comments, but screenshots just kept spreading. It was like watching a train he had set in motion finally derail in the one direction he had not planned for. He started texting me in a panic. "Tell them it is not true," he wrote. "Tell them those screenshots are out of context. Fix this." I stared at his messages. The same demand he had sent earlier about the catering, just repackaged. Fix this. Like I was a customer service department for our family's reputation. I did not reply. He switched tactics, sending voice messages about how he was losing opportunities because people were judging him based on one mistake, about how I was ruining his future. He did not mention once what my wedding day had felt like for me. It was almost impressive in a horrifying way. While all of that was happening online, my actual life continued offline. My little event consulting business kept moving. Clients still needed schedule plans and vendor lists and communication templates. My husband and I returned from our short honeymoon and settled back into our apartment, which now had a few extra wedding gifts stacked in the corner, waiting to be sorted. One afternoon, a couple of months after the whole viral chaos started, my assistant poked her head into my office. "There is a couple here asking for you," she said. "They do not have an appointment. They say it is urgent and family-related." I knew before I even stepped into the waiting area that it was my parents. My mother sat perched on the edge of the couch like she was posing for a picture, her hands clasped tight around her purse strap. My father stood beside her. Looking both exhausted and uncomfortable in a collared shirt, he clearly had not ironed himself. They both looked older than I remembered, which was saying something considering I had seen them literally in person at exactly 0 events in the past months. "Kendra," my mother said, her voice overly bright. "You look successful." "Thanks," I said, nodding toward the chairs in my office. "Come in. We have a few minutes before my next call." Inside, they both did a slow, surprised look around the room, like they genuinely had not believed I had a real office with real furniture and not just a folding table in a garage somewhere. The framed photos from past events on the wall looked back at them silently. "We did not know it was like this," my father finally said, gesturing around. "We thought you were still starting out." "I have been doing this for years," I replied. "You never really asked." My mother made a little dismissive sound, then caught herself, probably remembering why they were there. She dug in her purse and pulled out a folder, placing it on my desk. "We need your help," she said. "The shop is in trouble. The landlord is talking about throwing us out. Suppliers will not send new stock without payment. We need a loan to get through the next few months." There it was. Not an apology, not a genuine attempt to reconnect. A loan request. "How much?" I asked, because apparently I enjoy hurting myself. She named an amount that made my eyebrows shoot up. It was more than my entire starting capital had been when I launched my business. "And you came to me?" I said slowly. Because you are doing so well," my father said, as if that answered everything. "You always land on your feet. You have always been strong. Your brother is dealing with so much already. He cannot handle more stress." There it was again. The story. I was the tough one. The one who did not need support. The one they could pile things on because I could take it. My brother was the delicate genius whose dreams had to be protected at all costs. I took a deep breath and decided I was done letting them set the terms of every conversation. "We have not talked since my wedding," I said. "You missed one of the most important days of my life. Publicly trashed me online, lied about the timeline, and now you are sitting in my office asking for money without even acknowledging any of that? Do you realize how wild that sounds?" This time, my mother actually flinched. "We did not come here to fight," she said stiffly. "We came because family helps family." "Family shows up," I shot back. "Family does not plan to humiliate their daughter and then act shocked when it backfires." For once, my father looked genuinely ashamed. He ran a hand over his face. "We made mistakes," he muttered. "Your mother got carried away." Things were said in the heat of the moment. "In messages from months before is not exactly heat of the moment," I replied. My mother's eyes filled with tears, the same ones she had used on teachers, coaches, bosses, and extended relatives for years. "I did not realize it would hurt you this much," she whispered. "You have always been so strong." I laughed again, that almost hysterical sound. "You keep confusing strong with used to being hurt. Those are not the same thing." There was a long silence. I could almost see the fork in the road in front of me. On one side, the familiar path, cave, give them what they wanted, convince myself that helping them financially would prove I was the bigger person. On the other side, something new, boundaries. "I am not giving you a loan," I said finally. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "However, I am willing to pay for a professional to take a look at the shop, analyze what is actually going on, and recommend changes. If there is a way to make it work long-term, we can talk about that. But I am not just handing over money so you can keep doing the same things that got you here." My father looked relieved. "Honestly." He nodded slowly. "That is fair," he said. My mother pursed her lips. "You are policing how we use our own business," she said. "This is not just about numbers. It is about trust." "Exactly," I said. "Trust has to go both ways. You burned a lot of it when you chose my brother's party over my wedding. When you told people I was jealous. When you tried to use my name to pressure a vendor. If you want to rebuild any of that, it starts with honesty and accountability. Not with me writing a check so you can pretend nothing happened. She looked like she wanted to argue more, but my father put a hand on her arm. Let us take the help offered, he murmured. We cannot afford to be proud right now. We talked logistics after that. I got the details of the shop's situation, set up a meeting with a consultant I trusted. 2 weeks later, the consultant told them the truth they did not want to hear. The shop was not cursed. It was mismanaged. My father actually listened and started cutting the dead weight. My mother acted offended and blamed the neighborhood, the economy, anything but her decisions. And for the first time in my life, I let the consequences sit exactly where they belonged, with them instead of on my shoulders. Before they left, my mother hovered by the door for a second. Do you think we will ever be a normal family again? She asked softly. Define normal, I said. Because if normal means me swallowing everything and pretending it did not hurt, I am not interested. She nodded, eyes shiny, and walked out. Eyes shiny, and I wish I could tell you that was the turning point where everything magically improved. It was not. My parents made small efforts here and there, mostly when they needed something. They occasionally texted me pictures from the shop, asking for advice. My father showed up for a couple of quick lunches. My mother would send long messages about how hard it was to adjust to changing times, which was her code for having to treat my daughter like a separate adult person. My brother stayed quiet. Until he did not. About a year after the wedding, on a random Tuesday evening when I was already exhausted from dealing with a last-minute venue change for a corporate retreat, there was a knock at my apartment door. My husband was working late, so it was just me and the leftover takeout on the coffee table. I opened the door and there he was. My brother. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of his own drama was finally settling on his shoulders. Can I come in? He asked. I thought about saying no. I really did. Instead, I stepped aside and let him pass, more out of muscle memory than anything. He sat on the edge of the couch, his eyes darting around the room like he was cataloging the furniture. You have a nice place, he said. I always knew you would land on your feet. There it was again. That phrase. Like I was some kind of cat who could be thrown from any height and still walk away fine. What do you want? I asked, skipping past the small talk. He took a breath. I need your help, he said. A company was about to hire me for a really good position, and then someone sent them that old video and the screenshots. They backed out. They said my name is too controversial. He rolled his eyes at the phrase like he was the victim of some conspiracy. I lost a huge opportunity because of that stupid mess that you and your little internet army blew out of proportion. I raised an eyebrow. My little internet army? You know what I mean, he said quickly. You did not exactly try to calm it down. You let them drag me. You let that woman post everything. That woman? I repeated. You mean your ex, the one who realized you lied to her about our family dynamic and decided she was not going to marry into it. He winced, but kept going. Look, I am willing to put out a statement, he said. I will apologize publicly, say I handled things badly, whatever, but I need you to post something too. Say that you do not hold a grudge, that it was just a misunderstanding, that you love your family. Employers will see that, and it will help. For a second, I just stared at him. It was like watching someone try to bargain with a mirror. He genuinely believed the only problem left to solve here was his public image. If I lie publicly to make you look better, I said slowly, I am the one who has to live with that. I am not doing that. He threw his hands up. You are still so dramatic, he said. It has been a year. Do you really want to hold on to this forever? I said some things I should not have. So did Mom. So did you. I told the truth, I replied. That is the difference. You sat in a group chat plotting how to make me look jealous. You helped spin this story where I was the villain. You are only here now because it is finally costing you something you actually care about. His face hardened. You are really not going to help me, he said. I am helping you more by not letting you lie your way out of this, I said. If a company thinks twice about hiring someone who publicly trashed his own sister and was caught in lies, maybe that is not the worst thing. He stood up so fast the couch cushion bounced. You are petty, he snapped. You think you are better than us now just because you have your little company and your perfect husband. You cannot even forgive one mistake. One mistake? I repeated, feeling my temper finally spark. Try a lifetime of being told I was less than you. Try paying for your broken things while Mom praised you for breathing. Try watching our parents skip my wedding to throw you a party. This is not one mistake. This is a pattern, and I am finally not volunteering to be the mop. We stood there staring at each other for a long second. Then he shook his head like I was a lost cause and walked out, slamming the door behind him. My hands were shaking afterward, but I also felt this weird, quiet relief. For once, I had not folded. For once, I had not jumped in to rescue someone who would throw me under the bus again the second it was convenient. Life kept moving. Somewhere in the middle of all that, my husband and I hit our first anniversary. We went out to a small restaurant, ordered way too much food, and laughed about how much had happened in 1 year. At the end of the night, when the server brought out a little candle stuck into a dessert we did not need, my husband reached across the table and took my hand. "I have something else," he said. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and for a split second my brain panicked, like he was about to re-propose or something. Instead, he slid it across the table and nodded for me to open it. Inside was a tiny pair of socks. It took me a second to process. Then it hit me. "Are you serious?" I asked, my eyes already filling. He grinned. "About 10 weeks serious," he said. "I wanted to tell you in a cute way, but you kept working and stressing and saying you were just tired from clients. So I figured, tonight is our night. Surprise." I laughed and cried at the same time, because of course he had found one more way to show up for me without making it about himself. We sat there in that cozy little booth, planning our future kids' room with the kind of hope I had not let myself feel in a long time. Telling my parents was complicated. I called them the next day, partly because I knew they would find out eventually, and I did not want the news to come through some third cousin. My father answered. When I told him, his voice broke. "You are going to be a mother," he said softly. "I am happy for you, kiddo." He put my mother on. She started crying instantly, apologizing and talking over herself about how she wanted to be there for her grandchild, how this could be a chance to start fresh. She asked if my brother knew yet. She asked if I would let him be part of the baby's life. I listened for a while, then cut in gently. "This child is not a bridge for you to walk across whenever you feel like reconnecting," I said. "You and Dad will be in our lives if you are consistent, respectful, and able to keep your drama away from our home. If you slip back into old patterns, we will step back. That is not a threat. It is just a boundary." She sniffled. "You are really different now," she said. "Getting married changed you." "No," I said quietly. "Getting tired changed me." We hung up on mostly decent terms, which honestly was progress. When I think about it all now, it almost feels like a different lifetime. But sometimes when I look at my wedding photos, I still feel a little pang when I see that side of the room with the empty chairs. For a while, I thought I should edit the photos or avoid looking at them. Now I see them as proof. Proof that I was there, standing in a white dress, choosing a life where I did not have to earn basic respect. Proof that the people who showed up for me were the ones who actually wanted to be in my corner. Proof that the absence of certain people hurt, yes, but it did not break me. My husband and I ended up moving to a slightly bigger place when the baby got closer to arriving. Nothing fancy, just an apartment with an extra room that we painted one weekend while arguing over ridiculous things like curtain colors. My business grew slowly and steadily. I hired another part-time assistant. A trade magazine wrote a short feature on local women building solid event brands, and for the first time in my life, my mother sent me a screenshot of something about me with a caption that said proud. She still messes up. She still says things that make me want to bang my head against the wall. She slips into old habits, asking me to fix things for my brother or mediate some new conflict. The difference now is that I say no. Sometimes calmly, sometimes not. But I say it. My brother eventually found work in a different field in another town. We are not in regular contact. He sends a card on holidays signed with his name and some vague message about hoping we are well. I do not hate him. I also do not trust him. Maybe someday he will understand that you cannot treat someone like a backup option forever, and then act shocked when they stop answering your calls. My cousin and I talk more now. She has become one of those people who will send me a meme about family drama and then follow it up with a voice note checking on my blood pressure. My husband's parents absolutely adore our child and spoil them in the ways that matter. Time, patience, showing up. They come to the little daycare events and clap like the kid just won an award every time they manage to stand on one leg for 3 seconds. People sometimes ask me if my mother was at my wedding. I used to freeze up when that question came, like I owed them a neat answer with a moral attached. Now I just shrug. "No," I say. "She had other plans that day." If they push, I will tell the story, or at least the summarized version. How my parents chose my brother's engagement party over my wedding. How it went viral. How the truth eventually came out. Depending on how much time we have and how much wine I have had, I might even pull out my old phone and scroll through the screenshots, just to remind myself I did not imagine any of it. If I am being really honest, though, the part that sticks with me is not the internet, or the screenshots, or even the empty chairs. It is the moment in that hotel room when I finally told my mother no, when I refused to fix the mess she had made, when I chose my own peace over her approval. It did not feel empowering or cinematic at the time. It felt terrifying and messy and wrong. But looking back now, from a couch covered in crumbs and baby toys, with my husband snoring softly beside me after a long day, I can see it for what it was. It was the first time in my life that I chose me. And once you get a taste of that, it is really hard to go back to being the family's built-in scapegoat and emergency contact for chaos. I still love them in a complicated, exhausted way. But I love myself enough now to know that their empty chairs at my wedding say more about them than they ever did about me. That is the part I hold on to. That, and the memory of my husband turning off my phone in the hallway and saying, "You do not have to let them in tonight." Because as much as my family tried to make my wedding day all about what they did not do, the truth is, that was the day I started doing something different too. I just took a while to realize it. A week after that call, my mother tried the old move again. She texted, "Your brother is having a hard time. Can you talk to him?" I stared at it for a full minute, felt the guilt rise like it always did, and then I typed, "No. He knows how to reach me when he is ready to be honest." She left me on read. And for once, the silence did not feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Suddenly, that moment in the hotel room where I finally told my mother no stops looking like me being cruel or dramatic, and starts looking like the first time I dropped a load I was never meant to carry alone. It makes sense that it felt wrong in my body. My nervous system had decades of training that said my survival depended on keeping everyone else comfortable. I am not trying to turn this into some kind of inspirational story, by the way. I am still messy. I still answer calls I should probably let go to voicemail. I still over-explain my decisions and rehearse imaginary arguments in the shower like I am preparing for a trial that will never actually happen. There are days when I see a family out together at the park, laughing and passing a baby around, and I feel this sharp, stupid little stab of jealousy, even though I know nothing about them. For all I know, the woman in that picture is secretly the family scapegoat too. But there are also tiny, quiet wins that I am learning to count as actual victories. The first time my mother made a snide comment about how some people forget where they came from, and I simply said, "We are not doing this," and ended the call without explaining myself for 20 minutes. The first time my father tried to smooth things over by saying, "You know how your mother is," and I replied, "Yes, and she is responsible for that," instead of laughing it off. The first time my brother sent a long, self-pitying message about how hard his life is now, and I did not jump in with money or advice. I just read it, put my phone down, and went back to stacking little blocks with my kid on the living room rug. Speaking of the kid, they are the main reason I keep dragging myself back to those therapy appointments and boundary conversations, even on days when I would rather just avoid everything. I do not want them to grow up watching me bend and bend and bend until I snap. I do not want their earliest memories of family gatherings to be me disappearing into kitchens and hallways to take calls where my voice goes tight and small. I do not want them to learn that love means being last on the priority list, as long as everyone else is fed. We had a small baby shower, by the way. Nothing like the giant spectacle my parents would have planned if they had still been controlling everything. Just a handful of friends, my husband's family, my cousin, some co-workers who have become actual friends over the years. My mother insisted on being there, and I agreed with clear rules. No talking about the wedding, no backhanded comments about my brother, no guilt trips about the shop. She slipped once or twice, of course. There was a moment when she started to say, "If your brother were here," and I cut her off with a simple, "He is not, and that is his choice." The room got awkwardly quiet for a second, and then my husband's mother changed the subject by asking about baby names, bless her. Later, my mother cornered me in the kitchen and whispered that I had embarrassed her. "It is not always about you," she hissed. I almost laughed. "You are right," I said. "It is about the baby, and I am not going to let you turn their arrival into another episode of poor, mistreated son and his difficult sister." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. I do not know if it sank in or if she just got tired. Either way, she backed off. After everyone left that day, I stood in the nursery we had set up, looking at the tiny clothes folded in drawers and the stack of picture books my husband's parents had already started buying. I thought about all the nights I had spent as a kid, awake in my bed, listening to my parents argue in the next room about bills or my brother's grades or some relative's opinion. I thought about how small I had felt, like my job was to stay invisible so the tension would not get worse. I made myself a quiet promise there, out loud, just to hear it. "This house is not going to run on secrets and scapegoats," I said. "This kid is not going to grow up thinking they have to earn their seat at the table. Will I screw up sometimes? Absolutely. I am already anxious about the day my child points out some pattern I cannot see yet, and I have to decide whether to dig my heels in or listen. But at least I am walking into this with my eyes more open than my parents ever did. That is something. Every once in a while, my mother still brings up that viral video. She will say things like, "People only saw one side," or, "It made your brother look so bad," as if I do not remember exactly what their side was. I used to get sucked back into defending myself, listing timelines and screenshots and facts like I was preparing for a courtroom. Now I just say, "People saw what they saw," and change the subject. Because at the end of the day, it is not about convincing strangers on the internet that I was the wounded party. It is not even about getting my parents to fully admit they were wrong. It is about the fact that I lived it. I know what it felt like. I know what my wedding day looked like from the inside, standing in a room half full of love and half full of empty chairs, with my phone buzzing like a trapped insect in my bag. I also know what it feels like now to sit on my own couch, in my own home, with my own little family sprawled around me, and realize that the loudest voices in my life do not belong to my mother anymore. They belong to my kid trying out new words, and my husband laughing at some show, and my own voice, finally, slowly, learning how to talk to myself like I am on my own side. What changed was not some movie moment. What changed was me. I stopped negotiating my own reality just to keep the room quiet. What actually happened is that my parents started showing up in small ways and messing up in familiar ways, and I started responding differently. Sometimes I let them in for an afternoon and send them home when my social battery is fried. Sometimes I say no to invitations that feel more like obligations. Sometimes I do not pick up the phone. Sometimes I do, and the conversation is fine, and we hang up without either of us feeling gutted. My brother stays on the outer orbit. Maybe one day that will change. Maybe not. I do not build my schedule around the possibility anymore. If you strip away all the noise, what is left is pretty simple. Once, a long time ago, I was the girl who would have canceled her own plans, her own needs, her own peace, just to make sure everyone else was comfortable. I would have called the catering company, lied for my mother, posted a fake statement for my brother, twisted myself into whatever shape they needed. Now, I am the woman who looked at her phone, at her husband, at those empty chairs, and finally chose something else. Maybe that does not sound like much from the outside. But for someone who grew up being told her role was to absorb impact and ask for nothing, it is everything. And if I ever doubt it, all I have to do is look at that wedding photo again. The one where my husband and I are in the center of the frame, his family around us, the other side a stretch of empty linen and unused place settings. I used to see that as a picture of who I did not have. Now I see it as a snapshot of the exact moment I stopped begging for a seat at a table that was never set for me in the first place.